Hey, everybody. So you may or may have not noticed that we have not launched a podcast in about 3 months. And there's a good reason for that. If you are following me on any social media platform, you've noticed that we have launched a new company. And along with the new company, Bison Ventures, we are rebranding the podcast. So that's what's been going on. So no longer Real Talk with Ryan Madrid. We are now Into the Storm. So with all that being said, our first guests are Oleg Bortman and Art Shalomov, and we get into the whole situation going on with Russia and Ukraine, and both these guys are immigrants from that part of the world, and really interesting stuff from their perspective of what's happening there. So please check us out. Looking forward to the new launch and the new brand. So thanks for everything, and we'll talk to you soon. Hello, everybody. This is the first episode of Into the Storm, formerly known as Real Talk with Ryan Madrid. I have my two friends here, Art Shalomov and Oleg Bortman. He tested me on that. And Trisha over here helping with the production. And we have Trey over here on the engineering side of things. So the reason why we're doing this one as our first episode is just the timeliness of it all and what's going on in Ukraine. So these two guys, Oleg and Art, that's whose phone's going off there. So they're both were born in the former Soviet Union, right? USSR.
Yep.
And so you were born in Kiev, and I wrote down yours, Tishkent?
Yeah, it was Uzbekistan.
Uzbekistan, okay.
Yeah.
And so with all this stuff going on in Ukraine right now, I know you guys have been communicating a lot, and you're obviously passionate about what's happening there, and I've learned a lot from you guys, so I think it's really, really important that everybody understands what's happening there and how they can help. And so today's more of like an educational moment for everybody, because I'm not saying everybody's ignorant, but a lot of people are ignorant about what's going on there. And so having people like you guys is going to be awesome. So first thing, so talk about, let's just like your history in coming to the U.S. and then your history from coming to the U.S.
Sure. My name is Oleg Bortman. I was born in Kiev. At that time, it was part of the USSR. Now it's Ukraine, as everybody knows. It's its own country. We came over as Jewish immigrants in 1979. We came through Austria and Italy. It took about 6 weeks for the whole journey. We were fortunate. We came here and landed in New Jersey in August of 1979. A few months later, in 1980, they closed the borders, not allowing any more Jewish immigrants out of the USSR at that time. So I'm very blessed. I grew up on the East Coast. My mom and sister and family still live out here. And through Gorbachev and Perestroika in the mid to late 80s, he privatized or opened up and kind of got rid of all of USSR. So all the republics were separated back into their own countries. Ukrainian people are very passionate about their culture and where they live. In late 80s, early 90s, we then sponsored my grandmom, other cousins and aunts to come in the early 90s. And I still have like a cousin down in Florida who has a lot of close, dear friends and family still in Ukraine right now fighting this awful, awful war.
What about you, Art?
So, I was born in the former Soviet Union. I came to the United States when I was 10 years old, and I remember the whole process of being a refugee. And
Tell us the process, though, because I've heard the story. It's a good story. If you want to.
So I was 10 years old, and then you actually have to apply to be able to leave, and you go through the interview process. It probably takes probably 2 or 3 years to do that. So you wait in line, and I remember this. And my dad had a mother, and she was in her 70s. She wasn't doing very well health wise. And when you go through the interview process, you have to make sure that you check all the medical exams to make sure that you can actually you're healthy, and then you can make it through the flight, right? And my grandmother, she was just not doing well, and then they just wouldn't let her on the flight. So my dad ended up going to the hospital and basically kidnapping her in the middle of the night, right? And then the flight was in the morning. And basically took her to the airport, and as we're boarding the plane, and I remember this as a kid, they were like, "Hey, Mr. Shalomov, please come see the security." And I remember the security coming in and escorting us off the plane. So just being that whole process and just being an immigrant and coming to the U.S. it's not. It was just because the U.S. Or Soviet Union was so closed off. Like when you come to a country like the U.S., it's just a complete culture shock. Like there's no, you don't know the language, you don't know anything, and yet alone it's completely different culture. The way you think and process things, everything is so different. Just going through that, and then having my parents, trying to learn English and try to work without learning a word of English or knowing a word of English is just, it's incredible. So
there's one thing that both of you have said to me in the past, and I've heard both of you say this actually, I think in the last week or so, is like you're so like passionate about like being in the United States, right?
Sure.
Like just the land of opportunity. You always say that, right? It's just like you get so irritated when people are like complaining and bitching about things, because you're like, dude, you how lucky you have it right now.
Yeah.
And I think when we're dealing with this sort of situation right now, it's like you were saying before, people want to live in Ukraine. Like they want to be there. Even if all the people leaving now, the refugees, they want to go back there because it's a really nice place, right? People don't understand how nice of a country this is.
Correct. Yeah. So they're very patriotic, just like Americans are patriotic here in America. They love their culture. Their culture is a lot older than our culture here. They're very passionate. Their grandparents and great-grandparents, they've been there for literally like thousands of years. So they had their own lifestyle. They have their own language. They have their own religion. So they have their neighbors. The same neighbors live in the same buildings that their grandparents gave to them.
It's like generational,
It's
right?
generational. So it's hard to get somebody out, like Art was saying. Imagine getting uplifted at the age of 70 or 50. My parents were 30 and 42 and they got uplifted, right? We also didn't speak any foreign language.
Yeah.
We only spoke Russian and Ukrainian. They're similar dialects, but they're two different languages.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine waking up one morning, living with your neighbors for the last 50, 60 years and hanging out with your neighbors, and then all of a sudden, your neighbor, you look outside your window and your neighbor's building's getting blown up. I mean, that would be like somebody living in Chandler, going to work every single day, and then all of a sudden bombs start dropping. It's a sovereign country. People are living there every day, going to work, going to school, playing sports, PTOs, like we have. I mean, it's a free country. And then, yes, it got bombed and it's getting beat up right now by Russia, which is absolute awful atrocities. But people are like, we're going to rebuild.
Yeah.
They want to go home. So people are going to Poland's been an amazing neighbor, number one. They've taken over, I think, over 2 million.
Get close to the mic.
They've taken over at least over 2 million refugees. Hungary has been an amazing neighbor. Europe's been a great neighbor to Ukraine and what they're going through. But the people are leaving, for them in their mind, is a temporary move. Even though their apartments have been all blown up, they expect to go back to their neighborhoods and rebuild. That's their motherland. They want to go home.
Art, what's your connection there still? Like, you have family there right now?
I have family there, yeah. So they were able to get away to Hungary, and that's what it was before actually the war started. Speaking as a refugee, at least we had time to plan to come to the U.S.
Yeah.
But when bombs start, I mean, there was no planning. I mean, you just get the heck out. Like,
right.
I can't even imagine that. But
so do you think that the news has portrayed what's going on there in like a fashion that's like real, or do you think it's like we're just kind of seeing this little glimpse of things that they want us to see?
I think overall they're doing a pretty good job. Imagine being invaded, so the press is being blocked out, right? So Russia's sending their own propaganda to Russia and their media, and the wars, the soldiers are locking people out of places to go.
Yeah.
But I'm getting pictures of frontline soldiers sending clips to my cousin that's sending it over to me. So it's probably, no doubt, it's a lot worse being there, but at least we're getting images of buildings being blown up, hospitals being blown up, tanks driving up and down the streets over cars.
Right,
I mean,
like you were saying, it could be in like Chandler. Like
Chandler.
literally, like in the middle of Ocotillo, there could be like a tank
Yeah.
coming through, which is absolutely absurd and crazy to think.
In the 21st century, to think about this, it's
let's
crazy.
even a little more elementary in this, because I think this education side is good. So why is this even happening? Like for the people that they pretend like they know, tell us why is this happening?
Sure. I mean, listen, we
Art, you
grew
wanna
up.
go
Yeah.
first?
Well, I guess it depends who you ask, right?
Okay, yeah. So both of you guys.
So ultimately, so there's two parts to this. So what I actually did was I wanted to see what because we're seeing there's two different propagandas going on, like you mentioned. So I wanted to find out like what the heck, like how can you get soldiers to go out there and do what they're doing, right, and have a country backing. I mean, a lot of the Russians are supporting it because they're patriotic to their country, but I'm like wanted to see why are they supporting it. So what's the other side of the story? So the other side of the story is basically saying that they want to I can't say it, denationalize the other side. It's basically saying there's Ukrainian nationals that are kidnapping Russians and murdering them basically. So that's one part of the story, right? The crazy part is that the president of the Ukraine is actually Jewish, right? So they're saying that the whole government is a Nazi regime.
Right.
It's just crazy.
Right.
Now, just to mention on the other side, propaganda, it's completely different. Like, I don't know if you and it's hard to find it. Like you actually have to get subscribed. If you go on YouTube, you could subscribe to a Russian news channel, and you can actually see that it's so weird. They're basically portraying Zelensky as this clown, like he drinks all the time, and just they're showing these skinheads and Ukrainians. It's just so bizarre. Like it's completely two different stories. It's freaking crazy.
And if you look at it too, like just through humanity and morals, right? You don't see Ukraine throwing planes and dropping bombs in retaliation in Moscow and Leningrad, St. Petersburg. I mean, you have Russians that are protesting what Putin is doing, and they're being locked away instantly. So Ukraine, in this big picture of the two leaders, you have Zelensky, who's a Jewish Ukrainian, has morals and humanity, versus Putin, who's just killing everybody. I mean, obviously, when you go into war into a sovereign country, that's what's going to happen. But you don't see retaliation, right? So
they're just protecting at this point.
Right?
They're
trying to protect their land, and it's really a land grab. So, you know, Putin is historically KGB. He's a communist, and he wants back that he feels is right, the USSR. He's trying to rebuild it. It's not the first time. This happened in the early 2000s. He came in and took Georgia. And then under Obama, so 6-7 years ago, he took Crimea back in 2014. He felt that Ukraine is part of this rebuilding of what he's trying to bring back of the USSR. I'm not Putin. I don't think for him, but it's very clear what he's doing. And the people that are suffering are literally human. It's moms, kids, dads, cousins. It's everybody suffering in a sovereign country. In my opinion, my parents are from there. I lost great-grandparents in the Holocaust, so we've been through wars. But in my opinion, a lot of this could have been avoided. It wasn't like it just happened after the Olympics. The Russian troops were being built up for 5, 6, 7 months on the border. We as America knew. Poland knew. These countries knew what was going on. And, you know, we fell asleep behind the wheel. The issues of oil. Russia is a main supplier of oil and natural gas to Europe. So this could have been avoided if we pumped our own oil, which we did 4 years ago. 2 years later, we decided not to pump any more oil. So we can't support the European countries with natural gas or oil because they're buying it from Russia. So Putin has so much leverage. That's why a lot of the countries don't know what to do. So they did open their borders. They have morality. They have human decency to bring in these refugees, knowing that it is going to be temporary, because once this gets figured out, and I don't know what the end goal is. I don't know how much of Ukraine is going to go back to the USSR. Maybe none of it. I hope none of it does. But eventually the Ukrainian people are going to go back. This is their home. And a lot of this America could have stepped in. Now, I do want to give a shout out to and people have seen me on the news recently. The Arizona people have been absolutely amazing. I've gotten emails, tons of emails. Open up your doors. You're opening up houses. You're providing jobs. Our government right now, though, kind of like when Art was having a struggle and I was an immigrant and had a struggle, we're not opening our doors to the refugees. And that's way above our pay grade on figuring out how to get the refugees out here, number one.
So I was reading an article earlier today, and there said basically one of the reasons why they're not opening up the doors for refugees from Ukraine is because, one, Ukrainians are so loyal to their country, like you were saying, so that most of them would want to go back, and they don't want to be so far out in the U.S. But that's really not for us to decide, right? It's really for them to decide whether they want to, how far they want to go. And then the other part of that is the process just takes so long, as I remember. So it's just so hard, like bringing somebody right away. Like, how do you expedite that and make it available right away? I mean, I don't know what an answer is to that.
It's definitely not a convenient place for them to be coming to. That's for sure. I mean, just in all aspects, really. At the end of the day, they're going to, their neighboring countries and just crossing the border into Finland and Poland and Slovenia and neighboring countries, which are good. But I saw in the news this morning that they were talking to maybe like a 30-year-old mom, 2 kids, and husband was still back in Ukraine, and she was in Slovenia, and she's like, yeah, I'm going back. And they're like, why are you going back? She's like, I'm just going to go back. Like, I don't plan on staying here. I'm going to go back and see what happens. Like, I'm not going to just, and that was like the theme of the whole segment. Yeah. Was that people were there, they've been there for a few weeks, and they're like, cool, well, we know what's going on, but we're going back. We're going to go back, we're going to live in our houses, and we're going to do what we need to do to survive, which I don't think that's like a normal thing for most people in most countries, probably. Yep. When there's, their neighborhoods are getting bombed and stuff, and they're like,
Well, I think it's going to be at least a couple of years until even the economy comes back to normal. Like, how do you, like, there's no economy. It's destroyed at this point.
Yeah.
So it'll
business, right? Like,
I mean, like, you if you had a local convenience store and it gets destroyed, like, maybe that will, I mean, I don't know how long it's going to take to rebuild that and have it open up.
Right. Roads, like basic roads. Yeah, I mean, they're blowing up roads. So how do you?
The airport is destroyed.
It's I mean, this could be a decade plus to rebuild a country like this. But again, Ukrainians they're strong people. Yeah. If anybody met my mom, I mean, when my dad was alive, I mean, they called him a Russian bull. That they're just determined. Just like Art's here and I'm here, we're determined to live free. You know, a great slogan, a motto of New Hampshire is "Live free and die." Right. I mean, that's really, I think that if you translate it, that's really who they are. They're going to fight, and you'll see the soldiers that they're, the sons that are 30, 40, 20 fighting. Their dad, who's 60 years old or 70, will be alongside of them. Yeah. He'll send the mom go, but he'll stay. And his great grandfather, who might be still alive, will grab a gun. Like, they're so about family. They'll do anything for their family, and that's what makes this even so much more painful to see that we as Americans are willing to do more than our own government's willing to do for another sovereign country.
Right. What are other countries doing to help besides letting them in? As from a refugee standpoint, letting people in across the border and places to stay. I mean, I saw something about Spain was taking people. Like, so what else is going on? Like, what are people doing?
Yeah, people. So currently here locally, we're trying to get a ton of boxes together. So we're accruing. I just sent out an email blast: toothpaste, first aid kits, toothbrushes, Band-Aids, everything. Water, shipping water over. I mean, everything's getting blown up. So those countries like Poland, I saw literally on the news recently a picture of the train station. I mean, people are living in the train station. So just any necessity, just to even water, just to live, any kind of foods, snack bars, power bars, anything you can send.
And who's orchestrating that whole deal? I mean, there's a few different ones. I know.
Totally.
Is this the novaukraine.org? Is that local or?
It's a Ukrainian-based organization.
Okay.
It's new, called Nova Ukraine, and Nova means new in Russian. So Finland has done an amazing job. Spain, Poland, again, but this is another organization called novaukraine.org. They're also taking donations and then shipping stuff. I know.
Is there anybody shipping stuff locally though? Like, are we?
Yes, we're
is there a
collecting
place?
a bunch at our office this
Okay.
week. I have a super close friend of me, Holly, one of her best friends, is doing packages. So we at the brokery are collecting boxes, like again, toothbrushes, toothpaste, first aid kits, Band-Aids, because you can imagine what's going on right there. So, and we're going to start shipping them all out next week. So we are also participating in the shipping of anything first aid and healthy snack bars as well.
So
Awesome.
Did they contact you in order for that to happen?
Yes,
or
you can
what?
reach out to me at
Just
Oleg,
the office, the brokery.
yeah, Oleg at thebrokery.com.
Okay.
Is my email address, and I'd be more than glad to share the link of what we're collecting for.
And are you involved in that as well, Art? Or are you just doing some?
We'll help out as much as we can also on our end.
Yeah.
Nice. Is there anything else you think we should talk about as far as like history, geography, education about? Because I think that we talked about this earlier. I think that I've learned so much actually just like having to prepare for this that I'm like, wow, this is sad that like I knew so little. So I don't care how much you watch the news. I watched so much stuff about this on YouTube in the last like 2 weeks, clips, news every morning, and I still was like, I dove into a lot today. I just think that if there's anything else that we could talk about that we didn't talk about, maybe we talked about earlier that we're not doing now.
You know, Art and I were talking, and I think Art made a great analogy. If you look at what we're talking about, the USSR, which was the whole Soviet Socialist Republic in the 70s and before, it would be like, imagine you living in New York right now, Florida, California, and Arizona. We have 50 states. They had 15 republics. It would be one day waking up and the federal government saying, you know what, there's no more 50 states. Everyone's pretty much in the same time zone. Everyone's going to be controlled by one central government, the federal government. Imagine being stripped of all your rights. Because each state currently has different rules. Some allow guns, some don't.
Yeah.
Some allow marijuana, some don't. Some allow driving at 14, some at 16.
Yeah.
So imagine all centralizing it all as one. For the last 200 years or the last 100 years, Arizona just celebrated their 100th anniversary on Valentine's Day, but that's how everybody lived in Arizona. And all of a sudden, let's say Arizona's too conservative for you, and you got all the California rules. You'd be like, oh my God, what's going on? So it's not about politics, but imagine just changing your culture that you're used to, all under one administration. So what's happening there is Putin's trying to bring all the 15 republics back. But people have gotten their freedom. They don't want it anymore. They had choices. And now they chose not to go back to the way it was. That's a great analogy we were talking about, and I thought it was a brilliant way to describe it.
Yeah, but just growing up though, like I mean, I went to first through fifth grade in former Soviet Union, but like everything was just so, because it was communism, right? Everything was so the same. Like everyone was the same, and it's just like I was also thinking like Russians and Ukrainians, they're not the same by any means, but they're very similar. Their language is very, very similar. Mm-hmm. But it's just sad to see people from, I mean, Soviet Union was 70 years old, and they lived together all that time, and just for that to happen, and where now one country is invading another, and they've been like brothers for the longest time. It just
I think that, I mean, for a long time I thought he was from Russia.
Yeah.
Like that's what I thought. Mm-hmm. Like because I think you used to say.
I used to say I was from Russia.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of people do, and I think now that's probably all going to change, right?
Totally.
If they really were from Ukraine, they're going to be like, I'm
Ukrainian. Yeah.
Ukrainian Jew.
Well,
yeah, exactly.
Difference,
100%.
well, the difference is that you have Russia was a big part of it, right? So, like for example, my passport says, and U.S. passport says I'm from Russia, right?
Yeah.
It's not really. I can't say it's not really Russia, right? But there's a lot of Russian speaking from all over, and then you consider yourselves Russia. You say I'm Russian because it's easier to say that, right? Because it was such a big country.
Correct. The smaller countries, people would be like, if it'd be like somebody, if you're living in Europe and you're like, oh, I'm from Arizona, you say, no, I'm from America.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or if you or Montana, be like, where's Montana, right?
Right.
So
It's
that's
just
why we
easier
would
to
always
say.
say
Right.
we're all from
Okay.
Russia, but
Yeah.
we were one of the 15 republics under that play. But yeah, for sure. And what Art's saying is a great point. Is what's so sad about this is you have literally family members that are Ukrainian, and they literally have cousins that are living in Russia.
Yeah.
They don't want to fight each other,
Right.
but one government has decided to invade another, and they could be literally shooting at each other, not even knowing.
So I have a friend that lives in St. Petersburg, and he used to live here, and then he moved. He lives in St. Petersburg. And I talked to him on WhatsApp, and then he was like, "Man, he goes, it's just sad what's happening." And but he goes, "But you know what? Like all these sanctions that are imposed, he goes, I can't feed my family. Like, what do I do now? Like that's because all these sanctions are meant to go against Putin, right?
Yep.
But now it's like this entire war is affecting more than just the governments."
Totally.
Right? It's affecting everybody, whether you're, obviously Ukrainians, it's everything. It's a physical war, but in on the Russian side, all these sanctions are killed because they can't make any money. I mean, they can't feed their family. I mean, imagine like Facebook pulled out, Instagram pulled out, YouTube was pulling out,
Visa,
right?
MasterCard,
Visa, MasterCard,
American
all these
Express.
like this is a 21st century life. Like this is the new world we live in, and it's gone like that. So it's also affecting people, whether they support Russia or not, but they can't. How do you feed your family if overnight?
If somebody works at Visa and now they no longer have a job.
And you can't use the credit card. They're not taking credit cards in that country.
Oh, like for that aspect, but also like
Yeah, if you work for
all
the
the companies that
For sure.
employ all those people are, I mean, big brands,
Bigs.
big, American brands too that are there. They're like, well, we're not going to obviously keep
Right.
this going.
Yes.
So yeah, so even on the Russia side, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess just to wrap it, you guys, anything anybody can do to help is obviously the most important thing for us, and I guess just keep staying aware. But if they can come to contact you at your office and Art as well, bring something over that can be shipped over or donate. There's plenty of places to go online and to go and donate. The one we found earlier was novaukraine.org, but there's plenty of things that people can go out and find and to do their part. But has this like brought in like a whole like crew of like local Ukrainian people that are like finding each other, or besides YouTube, like I mean, communities has to be evolving everywhere across the world probably, and every community has got people from Ukraine.
Totally.
Don't you think? Like they're not looking for each other necessarily, but like coming together to kind of help.
Yeah, so what happens with you and I, we're talking on the phone on this. So when you come from a different country to like US, for example, you try to find your own people.
Yeah.
Right? Because and that's how you get little Italy,
Right.
little Russia, or Chinatown,
Chinatown,
right?
yeah.
That's how you connect with other people. And I was telling Oleg, like if we get refugees here that coming from Arizona, there's not a whole big community like it is in bigger cities such as LA or New York, Chicago.
Yep.
But if we get refugees here, we'll be able to at least point them in the right direction, help them out whichever way we can.
Yeah.
For sure. There's a lot of barbershops here. They're all Russian Jewish barbershops. So
I mean, now I'm like, are they Ukrainian Jewish barbershops or are they Russian Jewish barbershops? Because
it could be mixed,
I feel
right?
like they're all
yes.
Russian, but are they?
Are they?
That's
It's
my
a great question. Yes.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for coming and doing this for us. It's been informational and educational. Informational is good. And again, Oleg Bortman, Art Shalomov. That was good, right?
Yeah, good
I
job.
feel like you don't love it.
I know you practiced. I can tell you practiced.
But it'll work. All right, so that's just gonna wrap it for the first episode of Into the Storm, formerly known as Real Talk with Ryan Madrid. I'm just gonna say that just this one time.
You can say it.
Okay. And thank you to VIP Mortgage and Bison Ventures for helping us and supporting us in this awesome podcast. So, thanks again, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.